disclosure, this was the first Weezer album I ever listened to, and it's because of this album that I went back and listened through their entire discography. And while I know that's heresy to say, I still wanted to mention it to make it clear that I'm not biased. This album is just that good. When I heard that the producer from 5 Seconds of Summer was producing this, I was skeptical, to say the least. But I needn't have been, because the more I listened to this, the more it just clicked for me. Yes, it's pathetic. Yes, its writing is pretentious. Yes, it's nerdy, and yes, I love it for that. I honestly didn't expect to like this, as I usually prefer much cleaner pop productions like, say, Fox's. But eventually, this won me over. Great job, guys.
This one's for all the little dreamers, and the ones who never gave a fuck. I'm a product of the tube and the free lunch. Living room watching old reruns. And who cares, your daddy couldn't be here. Mama always kept the cable on.
The first time I heard this album, I loved it, but I kind of wished it was deeper. And yes, the more I listened to it, the more details and subtleties I came across in the lyrics, the voice clips, and especially the instrumentation. The guests are fantastic, and Paak is easily one of the best new talents in the rap game, with one of the most elastic and appealing voices in hip-hop and R&B today. With a talent for writing that is way better than you'd expect on first listen. If you haven't heard this album, do it now. And if you have heard this album, well, I'd say go listen to it again, but let's face it, you don't need me to tell you that. Fantastic album.
Just in case of rough waters, I wanna put one up for my brothers.
And here we have another of my new favourite talents of 2016. And I say new because this guy's been around since the 90s. Heck, he's already pumped out at least one bona fide classic with Labor Days in 2001, which I would argue is easily one of the best rap records of the 2000s, bar none. Now, much like Kendrick's Untitled Unmastered, this is not his best album, but it's still incredibly cohesive, and lyrically it is pretty much close to flawless. On top of that, it has a very interesting theme, as Aesop Rock explores his relations to those around him. Much like Lead Poison by eLZhi though, the production here really does let down certain songs. Not as badly as on Lead Poison, but it's still a bit of an issue. Still, if you have this kind of lyrical prowess and a theme that really does intrigue me, look, it's going to take a lot more than that for me not to endorse this.
Would you go back and do what you never got round? You know that you know that's not how it works. If you could be someone else, would you do it? If you could choose from a shelf, would you take a new self? You know that you
never has a title given me such a sense of foreboding and yet a certain amount of excitement. This is music that is just tailor-made for me. First of all, it's from a band I know and trust, primarily thanks to making one of the best hit songs of the past decade with Come With Me Now, an easy shoe-in for the best hit song of 2014. So, as you would imagine from the title, this modern rock record explores ego, both its benefits and its downsides. Okay, personally, I'm well aware that I have a bit of an ego problem at times. Heck, I think you have to have a bit of an ego in order to be on YouTube. Because of this, every song and angle they tackle this from resonates with me on a very primal level. Oh, and quite apart from the incredible lyrics, the instrumentation is awesome, with the drums, the guitars, and yes, the accordions. Sure, I'd hesitate to say there's a better song here than Come With Me Now, but you know what? That's not going to stop me from saying that this is still a great album and that you should all check this out.
If I'll never see the English evergreens I'm running to, it's nothing to me, it's nothing to see.
Look, it may not be his best, but that does not mean it's not absolutely fantastic. This is Bowie's last breath in more ways than one, and he seems heartbreakingly aware of that. Every voice crack, every cryptic lyric, even the weathered instrumentation all reflect his upcoming death and his fear for his legacy perfectly. Bowie's genius shines through as always, but it's especially haunting when you consider that right after he released this album, well, he died. And I mean it, that really does make this record haunting. Seriously, lines like "Where the fuck did Monday go?" and "I've got scars that can't be seen" really become almost prophetic, considering that he died on a Sunday of cancer that no one knew about except those who were closest to him. And as for his worry about his legacy, well, look, he can rest in peace, because believe me, this, along with the rest of his discography, is absolutely awesome and will definitely be remembered for years to come.
Tonight, everybody's gonna hear me out, 'cause I'm the right one. On my touch-tone telephone, I'm the only one. On your AM radio.
Yeah, I bet you didn't know the creator of Potter Puppet Pals would create one of the best albums of this year. But yeah, despite the incredibly strange lyrics and instrumentation, particularly on songs like Sweet Bond, which on first listen sounds like a song about necrophilia, each of these songs is a Kurt Weill situation where I'm not sure if there is a deeper meaning or if I'm just overanalyzing. Either way though, it's still one of the weirdest, catchiest, and most fun albums of the year so far.
Hold yourself back, put yourself last, never first. Always make them laugh, say you're sorry, don't make it worse. Take a deep breath, give them what they want and smile. All my life, I've tried to do what's right, but
Can we just all admit that feminist music is barely ever a bad thing? However, this middle-aged woman tackled it from a very interesting angle, as she explores herself as a human being and makes her own choices, regardless of what anyone thinks of her, particularly feminists and women in general. Now, White Lung also made an album earlier this year exploring this sentiment of women judging other women, but I'd be inclined to give the edge to Jennifer Nettles for better writing, courtesy of modern country legend Brandy Clark, better production, stronger hooks, and more than anything, life experience. I mean, after 41 years on this earth, you can definitely tell in her delivery that she has been through some shit. And so, with all that put together, she created an album that I can't possibly hate. In fact, I love it. Check it out.
I'm telling these tears go and fall away, oh. May the last one burn into flames. Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose, yeah. Freedom, freedom,
Of all the surprises of 2016 so far, this has easily been the biggest. To put it mildly, I have never been a fan of Beyonce's music, and I've never embraced her as Queen Bee. And yet, this album blew my fucking mind. It's honestly amazing how well this album works. If I were to make a top 10 Beyonce songs, 9 of the songs off of this album would make that list, with the final spot going to Crazy in Love featuring Jay-Z, the only Beyonce song I truly loved before listening to this album. So what I'm saying is, if it could win me over, then that definitely means that you need to listen to it. I'm sorry for everything Beyonce has allegedly been through in order to create this album, but most great art comes from pain. I mean, look at 808s and Heartbreak by Kanye West. Seriously, this definitely deserves a listen, or 20.
Collapse into a great resolve. Everything falls. A broken image reflects from a shattered surface.
One of my favourite albums of 2015 is Autumn Eternal by Panopticon, an album that consistently blew my mind for 2 weeks before I put it on the list. So going back to it, I totally overrated it, right? Fuck no. That album is incredible, especially considering I find it difficult to relate to most metal outside of Power and Symphonic, of course. But this might be even better. Overly long songs aside, pretty much all genres in metal are guilty of this at some point or other. The story and moral of this album are, in a word, perfect. Seriously, I would rather listen to this than watch most famous sagas. It's that good of a story. And sure, the vocals can be cheesy, the instrumentation can be very self-indulgent, but awesome, so who cares? And the writing is very over the top, but my god, is it epic! This album also pulls from a bunch of power and black metal, and you can really tell. However, they only serve in increasing the awesomeness on display here. I won't spoil the story for you, but let's just say with great power comes great responsibility, and sometimes that responsibility can be a bit too much. Did I just give away the ending? Oh well, if you haven't listened to it yet, it's your own bloody fault. And yet, despite all of that, it's still not my favourite metal album of the year so far, which we'll get to in a moment. And again, I'm not a typical metalhead. These albums are just that awesome. Check this one out.
A party from me.
Hey, looks like Beyonce wasn't the only one to turn her misery into good music this year. In a year where we lost David Bowie, music icon and legend, here's an artist who obviously takes a lot of inspiration from Bowie's music, and he uses that inspiration to create an album about relationships from the point of view of a guy who is kind of an asshole and who is apparently based on Kyle Craft himself. I know, it sounds terrible. And in a way, it kind of is, in the same way that I Love You Honey Bear by Father John Misty is terrible. Or, in other words, easily one of the catchiest, best produced, most self-aware and well-written, nuanced album of the year. It's every bit the torrent of bullshit that you hope for going into this. The catharsis is real, the patheticness doesn't try to disguise itself as anything but, and the writing is just wonderful, actually managing to measure up to some of David Bowie's best work. And while I know that'll be an unpopular opinion, and while I know that Kyle Craft himself will probably disagree with me, shut up! It's my opinion, and in my opinion, you are brilliant. Deal with it.
That house without you in it is nothing but a shell. Since you've gone to heaven, the whole world's gone to hell.
And here we have the most recent entry to this list. An album from an artist that really did strike me. I adored Playing With Fire, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect from Brandy Clark's own album. What I got was an album that easily matched, if not surpassed, her debut album. And keep in mind, her debut album was my second favourite country album of 2013, only second to Casey Musgrave's classic album Same Trailer Different Park. I was initially skeptical when I saw Jay Joyce on production, but, well, apparently since Eric Church is misunderstood, he's really been improving by leaps and bounds. This album contains some of the best country music in recent memory. It's heartbreaking, astonishingly well written, and summed up in the title incredibly well. If it wasn't for one other entry earlier this year, this would be a shoo-in for the best country album of this year. Incredible album. Check it out.
Terrible marching orders, give me dirty water, give me anything except shorter. Gunned down when it's sundown, murdered in cold blood every day. Yeah, don't hope to springs eternal like you don't know. I'm about to be gunned down when it's sundown.
In 2014, this guy blew my mind with dark comedy. And honestly, just like that album did, this one took a little bit of time to really click with me. But frankly, this might be even better. While Denzel Curry's album Imperial dealt with racial stereotypes with cleverly nuanced aggression, Open Mike Eagle takes a very different approach, retreating inwards, creating an album that isn't just political, but incredibly introspective and, well, hella personal. And look, this album was practically made for me. I relate to this so much. The key to this album is relatability. From the wonderfully awkward moments of the two insecurity tracks, to the manic need for affirmation on Check to Check, to the unfortunate reality of being judged for the crime of just being black on songs like Smiling Quirky Race Doc and A Short About a Guy That Dies Every Night. But it's the cohesiveness between all these tracks that really does sell it, perfectly depicting the day in the life of our protagonist, who I relate to more than I'd like to admit. Pair that with Paul White's fantastic instrumentation and production, and you have a hip-hop classic in the making. the beginning of this year, I was pretty desperate for some good symphonic and power metal. And although it took some time, I finally came across Avantasia, who, after years of trying, finally turned in a damn classic. Tobias brought together a pantheon of A-list talent to record this monolith of a concept album. With phenomenal instrumentation, both organic and electronic, surprisingly deep lyrics detailing faith, technology taking over humanity, the loss of individualism in favor of hard logic, dreams, imagination, and creativity. And of course, the whole thing is delivered by talented guest vocalists left and right. In other words, for me, this is easily my favorite symphonic metal album since the last symphonic metal monolith directed by a genius producer bringing together a pantheon of A-listers, namely The Theory of Everything by Ariana Lucasen of Ariana. And if we're making those kind of comparisons, then you should know just how epic this album is. Check this out.
Only I could sustain my anger. Feel it grow stronger and stronger.
It's one thing for an album to appeal to your tastes. It's another thing entirely for an album to change your entire perspective on a whole group of people. And in this case, I have to admit that I was being presumptuous as hell. For years now, I and a lot of other people my age have scorned privileged emo kids, otherwise known as millennials. And look, while emo and scene music was regularly over the top and ridiculous as all hell. Heck, I think the only time I really enjoyed emo music was when it was over the top and theatrical, like, say, Panic at the Disco. This album was a much-needed gut punch of reality and human suffering. And that's how I best describe this. Human. It's relatable, heart-wrenching, and often depicts very ugly yet very real situations. Apart from that, the instrumentation is just amazing. Will Toledo, the frontman, has already named his influences, but this actually reminds me of a weird blend of The National and two bands I absolutely love. Seriously, the incredible guitars, the off-kilter production, especially on the vocals, it's uncanny. But it's the lyrics that really hit me, not only getting me to sympathize with the emo genre, but actually making me feel guilty for judging them in the past. Because, let me be clear, these lyrics pull exactly zero punches when it comes to how millennials were perceived and dealt with wrongly, by the way, at the time, and confronts the reality behind the movement, admitting its flaws, but also pointing out that two wrongs don't make a right. In other words, saying that just because they were acting weirdly doesn't mean that other people have the right to judge them. An album this awesome was a shoo-in for this list, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. However, if I'm being honest, there was one album that just clicked for me a little bit more, and here it is. If you're a fan of country music and you haven't checked out this album yet, you are seriously missing out. Not only is this album an instant country classic, with the best producer currently working in country music teaming up with the best lineup you could possibly dream up in both mainstream and underground country music, but every single performer here outdoes himself. When the worst thing I can say about an album is that the best songs are so damn amazing that they kind of outshine the still great other songs, then you know that we're dealing with something special. I always hesitate to call an album perfect. Heck, it took me a long time to even admit it with I Love You Honey Bear last year. But if I was to give that distinction to any album this year, then this definitely comes as close as any album this year will probably come. In other words, while it may yet be topped, keep in mind we still have albums from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Poets of the Fall, and Run the Jewels coming out later this year. Honestly, I'm not sure if it can be topped. But either way, for now, this is easily my favorite album of 2016. Make of that what you will, disagree if you like, but honestly, I don't really care. I love it, I'm happy, and all I can say is check this out. So, that was my list. 2016 has got off to a pretty good start so far. First of all, can I please apologize for my voice throughout this video? I'm suffering from serious hay fever, which is why I sound so gummed up. So, if there are a couple of words you miss, then that's perfectly normal. But secondly, are there any albums that I missed or that I should definitely listen to before the year is out? If so, please post in the comments. Also, again, my top 25 songs that were on albums that didn't make this list are in the description, so check those out as well. As for my next video, I've honestly got no idea when it'll drop. It might be next week, it might be next month, I honestly don't really know. But hey, that makes it more exciting, right? We'll just have to wait and see. Till then, I'm Finn, and this is The Social Tune, signing off.